I felt the bass thrumming through my chest, the crowd pressing against me from all sides, bodies moving as one massive pulse. The lights flashed across thousands of faces, but all I could focus on was the heat radiating from the stranger beside me. His shoulder brushed mine with every beat, sending electricity through my skin. I caught his eye during the guitar solo, and something shifted between us, raw, immediate, undeniable. When he leaned in, his breath warm against my ear, I knew this night was about to become unforgettable. Hey, if you're already feeling the energy, smash that like button and subscribe. Trust me, you won't want to miss where this goes. The music was deafening, but somehow I heard every word he whispered. You move like you own this place, he said, his voice cutting through the chaos around us. I turned to face him fully, taking in the sharp jawline, the way his dark eyes seemed to drink me in even in the strobing lights. Maybe I do, I shot back, letting my hips sway with the rhythm, deliberately brushing against him. Jaden, I'd learn his name later, didn't step back. Instead, he moved closer, his hands finding my waist as we swayed together. The crowd around us faded into background noise. There was something magnetic about the way he held my gaze, confident but not cocky, like he could read exactly what I was thinking, and what I was thinking was dangerous. I've never done this before, I admitted, though my body was already betraying that hesitation. My hands had found their way to his chest, feeling the steady thrum of his heartbeat beneath the thin fabric of his shirt. Done what? He asked, though his smirk suggested he knew exactly what I meant. Let a complete stranger get this close, I breathed, my voice barely audible over the crescendo building on stage. His fingers traced along my spine, sending shivers through me despite the heat of 1,000 bodies pressed together. Good thing. I'm not planning to stay a stranger much longer. The lead singer's voice soared through the stadium, and I felt something wild unfurling inside me. This wasn't like me, the careful, planned version of myself that measured every risk. But tonight, with the music pounding and this man's hands anchoring me to the moment, I wanted to be someone else entirely. There's a backstage area, he said, his lips brushing my ear. Security's light during the show. Want to see where this goes? I should have said no, should have stayed in the safety of the crowd, enjoyed the concert like any normal person would. But the way he was looking at me, the way my entire body was responding to his proximity, I nodded before I could second-guess myself. He took my hand, weaving us through the packed bodies with surprising ease. The further we moved from the main crowd, the more intimate the space became. Couples pressed against barriers, lost in their own private moments while the music provided cover. My pulse quickened with each step. The backstage area was dimly lit, a maze of equipment cases and cables. He guided me behind a tall speaker stack, where the sound was muffled but the bass still vibrated through the ground beneath our feet. Suddenly, we were alone. Second thoughts? He asked, his hands resting lightly on my hips. Instead of answering, I pulled him closer, my lips finding his in the half-darkness. The kiss was electric, hungry. Everything the careful distance between us had been building toward. His hands tangled in my hair, and I pressed myself against him, feeling the solid warmth of his body. You taste like possibility, he murmured, against my mouth, and I laughed despite the heat coursing through me. That's the worst line I've ever heard, I said, but I was already reaching for the hem of his shirt, desperate to feel more of his skin against mine. Good thing I'm not here for my conversation skills, he replied, his own hands finding the zipper of my dress. The fabric pooled at my feet, and for a moment, the reality of what we were doing hit me. Here I was, half undressed behind a concert stage with a man whose last name I didn't even know. But when his eyes met mine, dark with desire and something deeper, the doubts melted away. You're incredible, he breathed, his fingers tracing the curve of my shoulders, down my arms, leaving trails of fire in their wake. I reached for his belt, my fingers working with surprising steadiness despite the way my hands were trembling. Show me, I whispered. Show me how incredible you think I am. He lifted me easily, pressing my back against the smooth surface of an equipment case. The coolness against my skin was a sharp contrast to the heat building between us. His mouth found my neck, lips, and teeth, creating a symphony of sensation that had me gripping his shoulders for anchor. Right here? I gasped, though my body was already arching toward him. Right here, he confirmed, his voice rough with need, unless you want to stop. But stopping was the last thing on my mind. The distant roar of the crowd, the pulsing lights bleeding through the gaps in our makeshift shelter, the knowledge that thousands of people were just meters away, it all added to the intoxicating rush. When he pressed against me, slow and deliberate, I bit down on my lip to keep from crying out. The sensation was overwhelming, every nerve ending alive with electricity. He moved with careful precision, reading my responses, adjusting his rhythm to match the silent music our bodies were creating together. Look at me, he said, his hand cupping my face. I want to see you. I met his gaze, and something passed between us that went beyond the physical connection. In that moment, surrounded by the chaos of the concert, we created our own private universe. Every movement sent waves of pleasure through me, building steadily like the crescendo of the song playing in the distance. My fingers dug into his back, holding him close as the tension coiled tighter and tighter inside me. The world narrowed to just this, The feeling of him moving within me, the way his breath quickened against my throat, the steady rhythm that matched the thunder of my heartbeat. "Don't stop," I whispered, my voice breaking on the words. He didn't. His pace intensified. More urgent now, driven by the same desperate need that was consuming me. I could feel myself approaching the edge, every sensation magnified, every touch electric. When the release finally came, it crashed over me like a tidal wave. My body shuddered against his, waves of pleasure radiating outward from where we were, joined. He followed moments later, his own control finally breaking as he buried his face in my shoulder. For a long moment we stayed like that, breathing heavily, our bodies still entwined. The music swelled around us, the crowd's energy palpable, even from our hidden corner. "That was—" I started, then trailed off, unable to find words for what had just happened. "Yeah," he agreed, pressing a soft kiss to my temple. "It was." We dressed slowly, stealing glances at each other in the dim light. The spell wasn't broken exactly, but reality was starting to seep back in. When we emerged from our hiding spot, the concert was reaching its finale, fireworks exploding overhead in brilliant cascades of color. "Want to watch the rest together?" he asked, taking my hand. I nodded, and we made our way back toward the crowd. But something had changed. The energy between us was different now, still electric, but layered with something deeper. We swayed together through the final songs, his arms wrapped around me from behind, and I felt completely, utterly alive. When the lights came up and the crowd began to disperse, I turned to face him. "So, what happens now?" He smiled, that same confident expression that had drawn me in from the beginning. "Now we see if this was just the music talking, or if there's something real here. And how do we do that?" Instead of answering directly, he pulled out his phone. "Give me your number. Let me take you to breakfast tomorrow, somewhere quiet where we can actually hear each other talk." I hesitated for just a moment. This whole night had been so far outside my comfort zone, but maybe that was exactly what I needed. I rattled off, my digits, watching him save them under "concert girl." "Really? That's the best you can do?" I laughed. "I prefer to think of it as mysterious," he replied with a wink. We walked toward the exit together, the crowd thinning around us. At the parking lot, we reluctantly separated, different cars, different directions home. But as I drove through the empty streets, I couldn't stop smiling. My entire body still hummed with the memory of his touch, and I found myself already anticipating his call. The next morning came too soon, and not soon enough. I woke with the kind of delicious soreness that reminded me exactly how I'd spent the previous evening. My phone sat silent on the nightstand, and for the first time since giving him my number, doubt crept in. Had it just been the moment, the music, the crowd, the intoxicating atmosphere of the concert? Maybe in the harsh light of day, what we'd shared would seem like nothing more than a one-night impulse. But around 10, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Still thinking about last night? Coffee in an hour?" There's a quiet place on 5th Street that serves the best pancakes in the city. Relief flooded through me, followed quickly by nervous excitement. I typed back, "Make it an hour and a half. I need time to make myself presentable." "You were perfect." "Last night?" came his reply. "But take your time." I spent longer than I cared to admit choosing what to wear, something that said I was interested but not desperate, casual but still attractive. Finally, I settled on a sundress that skimmed my knees and sandals that were comfortable enough for walking. The cafe was everything he'd promised. Small, cozy, with mismatched furniture and the kind of worn charm that spoke of real character. I spotted him immediately at a corner table, looking somehow even more appealing in daylight. He stood when he saw me, that same magnetic smile spreading across his face. "You made it," he said, pulling out my chair. "Did you think I wouldn't?" "Honestly, I was about 60% sure you'd decide I was crazy and block my number." I laughed, settling into my seat. The thought crossed my mind, but then I remembered how good those pancakes were supposed to be. "Ah, so you're just here for the food. I see how it is." But his eyes were twinkling, and the easy banter felt natural, despite everything that had happened between us. We ordered pancakes for me, eggs Benedict for him, and fell into conversation that flowed as easily as it had been difficult the night before. "So what do you do when you're not seducing strangers at concerts?" I asked, cutting into my stack of blueberry pancakes. "I'm a sound engineer, actually. I work for the venue. Last night was technically a work night for me." "Wait, you mean you could have gotten us actual backstage passes, and instead you chose to sneak around like teenagers?" He grinned sheepishly. "Would you believe me if I said it was more fun that way?" "Actually, yes, I would." We talked for hours, about music and work and dreams and the kind of random thoughts that reveal character. I learned he'd moved to Austin for the music scene, that he played guitar badly but with enthusiasm, that he'd been single for 8 months after a relationship that ended amicably, but definitively. "What about you?" he asked. "What's your story?" Found myself being more honest than I usually was on dates, if this even counted as a date. I told him about my job in marketing, my complicated relationship with my family, the way I'd been feeling stuck in a rut until recently. "Until recently?" he prompted. "Until last night," I admitted. "I haven't done anything spontaneous in, God, probably years. I'm usually the girl who researches restaurants for weeks before making a reservation. And yet you followed a complete stranger into a dark corner at a concert. Don't remind me how out of character that was. I'm not judging. I'm impressed. The word hung between us, weighted with meaning. He reached across the table, his fingers brushing mine. I'm glad you did. Follow me, I mean. Me too. When we finally left the cafe, the afternoon sun was slanting, long across the sidewalk. Neither of us seemed ready for the day to end. Want to walk around for a bit? He suggested. There's a record store a few blocks away that you might like. I agreed, and we strolled through the neighborhood, pointing out interesting architecture and debating the merits of various musical artists. At the record store, he found a rare pressing of an album I'd mentioned loving, and bought it for me despite my protests. Consider it a memento, he said, of the night you decided to be spontaneous. Are you trying to make sure I don't forget? You? Do you think there's any chance of that? The honest answer was no. Everything about the past 24 hours felt burned into my memory with unusual clarity. But admitting that felt too vulnerable, too soon. Instead, I stood on my tiptoes and kissed him, right there between the folk and jazz sections. It was softer than our frantic connection the night before, but no less intense. When we broke apart, I could see other shoppers trying not to stare. Come home with me, I said quietly. He searched my eyes. Are you sure? I'm sure. My apartment was a 10-minute drive from the record store. We made small talk on the way, but the air was charged with anticipation. Inside, I suddenly felt nervous. This was my space, my life, not some anonymous corner where we could disappear into the moment. Nice place, he said, looking around at my carefully curated living room. Thanks. It's not much, but he silenced me with a kiss, his hands framing my face. Stop apologizing for things that don't need apologies. This time we took our time. Where the night before had been frantic and desperate, now we moved with deliberate slowness, savoring each revealed inch of skin, each soft gasp and whispered encouragement. He traced patterns on my back with his fingertips, and I memorized the taste of his throat. When we finally came together, it was with a gentleness that somehow felt more intimate than our wild encounter at the concert. We moved in perfect synchronization, building toward a crescendo that left us both breathless and clinging to each other. Afterward, we lay tangled in my sheets, talking quietly as the sun set outside my bedroom window. I traced lazy circles on his chest, marveling at how comfortable this felt despite knowing him for less than a day. I should probably head home soon, he said eventually, though he made no move to leave. Should you? Well, I've got work early tomorrow, and you probably have things to do. I do, I agreed. But maybe they can wait a little longer. He smiled, pulling me closer. I was hoping you'd say that. We dozed for a while, waking as full darkness fell. He did leave eventually, but not before making plans to see each other again the following weekend. As I watched his taillights disappear down my street, I felt a mixture of satisfaction and anticipation that was entirely new to me. The next few days passed in a blur of text messages and phone calls. We talked about everything and nothing, sharing random thoughts and inside jokes that developed with surprising speed. By the time our official second date arrived, it felt like we'd known each other for months. He took me to a small venue where a local band was playing. Nothing as massive as the stadium concert where we'd met, but the music was good and the atmosphere was intimate. We danced close together and I marveled at how different this felt from that first frantic encounter. The desperation was gone, replaced by something steadier but no less intense. No sneaking off tonight? I teased during a quiet song. I was thinking we could try a bed this time, he replied, his breath warm against my ear. Revolutionary concept, I know. My place or yours? Surprise me. We ended up at his apartment, a converted loft with exposed brick walls and musical equipment scattered in every corner. It suited him perfectly, creative, slightly chaotic, but with an underlying order that spoke to his technical precision. This time, when we came together, it felt like a conversation we'd been having all week, through stolen glances and casual touches. Our bodies remembered each other, but the urgency had transformed into something deeper, more purposeful. Lying in his bed afterward, surrounded by the gentle hum of his recording equipment, I realized something had shifted permanently inside me. Not just about him, though that was certainly part of it, but about myself. The spontaneous woman who'd followed a stranger into the shadows. She wasn't a one-time aberration. She was a part of me I'd been ignoring. Penny for your thoughts, Jaden said, his fingers trailing through my hair. Just thinking about how different everything feels now. Different how? Better, I said simply. More alive. He was quiet for a moment. You know, I've been thinking the same thing. We were both careful not to use the word love. It was too soon, too intense, too frightening. But something was building between us that felt bigger than attraction, more lasting than infatuation. Over the following weeks, we fell into a rhythm that felt both new and natural. He'd pick me up after work sometimes, and we'd drive to random spots around the city, exploring neighborhoods we'd never seen. I started going to more concerts, letting the music move through me the way it had that first night. He introduced me to artists I'd never heard of, and I showed him the quiet coffee shops and bookstores that were my usual haunts. The physical connection between us only grew stronger. Every touch felt electric, every kiss a promise of more to come. We made love everywhere, in his studio after hours, in my kitchen while dinner burned forgotten on the stove, in the backseat of his car during a thunderstorm that had us laughing and gasping by turns. But it wasn't just about the intimacy. Though that was undeniably incredible. It was the way he listened when I talked about my dreams, the way he encouraged me to take risks I'd never considered. It was how he'd text me, song lyrics that reminded him of something I'd said, or show up at my office with coffee just because he was thinking of me. "You've changed," my best friend Sarah observed over lunch one afternoon. "You're, I don't know, more yourself somehow." "What do you mean?" "You're taking chances. Last month you wouldn't try a new restaurant without reading 20 reviews. Now you're dating someone you met at a concert and talking about maybe switching careers." She was right. Jaden had rekindled something in me that I'd forgotten existed, a willingness to leap without looking, to trust that the net would appear. It was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. "So when do I get to meet this mystery man?" Sarah continued. "Soon," I promised. "I want to be sure of what? That this is real, I thought but didn't say. That this feeling burning inside me isn't just the novelty wearing off. That he means what I think he means when he looks at me like I'm the most fascinating thing he's ever encountered." But even as I had those doubts, I knew they were just fear talking. What Jaden and I had was real, messy and complicated and absolutely terrifying, but real. The question wasn't whether it would last, but whether I was brave enough to let it. A month after that first concert, he surprised me with tickets to see the same band again. "I thought it might be fun to revisit the scene of the crime," he said with that crooked smile I'd come to love. "Are you planning to seduce another unsuspecting concert goer?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "Just one," he replied, pulling me close. "The same one as last time, if she'll have me." Standing in that crowd again, his arms around me as the music swelled, I felt the perfect circle of it all. We'd come full circle, but everything had changed. I wasn't the careful, calculated woman who'd gone to that concert alone, and he wasn't a stranger whose name I didn't know. We were something new together, something neither of us had been separately. And as the lights flashed and the crowd moved around us, I knew this was just the beginning of our story. Have you ever had a moment that changed everything, where one spontaneous choice opened up a whole new version of yourself? Would you have followed a stranger into the shadows, or would you have stayed safe in the crowd? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I love hearing about the moments that transformed you. And don't forget to like this video and hit subscribe for more stories that'll make you question everything you thought you knew about taking chances. Until next time, keep dancing to your own rhythm.